want to thank the South San Antonio Independent School District and the Bobcats for having us here. I thank Representative Charlie Gonzalez for his service and for being here. Thank you, Congressman Lloyd Doggett. I'm a big fan of the Castro brothers. Now, I just said that. By this afternoon, the Republicans will have an add-on in Florida saying, Clinton endorses Fidel and Raul. But I mean Julian and Joaquin Castro. I'm honored to be here to support them and their agenda, to support Joaquin going to Congress, and to support Pete Gallego. And I want to say, there's a lot of people in this audience I'm glad are here, but as one of America's most fanatic sports fans, I'd like to thank Coach Greg Popovich for being here. Now, when I get home to New York, I will hear it from the Knicks. I will hear it from the Nets. But I can't help it. I think he's wonderful. I know you do too. I want to say a couple of things about these candidates in this race for Congress. But I want to try to put it into some context. If you look at the campaign that's being run against Pete Gallego, it's your basic standard Tea Party deal. The government would mess up a two-car parade, and God is on my side. Isn't that basically what they're saying? I don't want to get into a religious dispute, but the Bible that I read says that the only time Jesus got really angry was when he had to run the money changers out of the temple. He did not believe that church would stay. They always say they represent the original intent of the framers of the Constitution. They would be appalled by anybody trying to use any religious image to advance a particular candidate's agenda. Nobody owns God, nobody owns the flag, nobody owns love for America. The question is who's right and who's wrong. Pete Gallego is right for San Antonio and for America and for the future of this country. You know, I think it's because he had a lot of real jobs. Because he did not only work his way through college, he was a prosecutor. And when you're a prosecutor, you have to win on the evidence. You can't win on ideology. You actually have to show proof. He helped to create a law to establish a DNA database so there would be proof, and innocent people would not go to jail, and guilty people could be proved guilty. Sometimes I think only in Washington, D.C. is ideology more important than evidence. But in your life, the evidence matters, and you should send an evidence-based candidate to the United States Congress. You should elect Pete Gallego. You should send him because he supports the DREAM Act. You should send him because he supported President Obama when he said young people who were brought here as children, who weren't documented, who wanted to go to college or serve in the military should be able to stay here and serve their country. You should send him because his opponent is attacking him for President Obama's health care bill, and he wasn't even in Congress. And what they're attacking him on, I'll say more about that later, is claiming some savings in Medicare that was in their nominee, Paul Ryan's budget, that his opponent voted for. It takes some real guts to attack somebody for doing the same thing you did, but it takes even more to attack somebody for doing something he couldn't do that you did. Now, I want to say something about Joaquin Castro. He is the current chair of the Higher Education Committee, right, in the Texas Senate. Now, why does that matter? Because President Obama told us a couple of days ago that the country is in the grip of a massive public health crisis called Romnesia. And that there is this virus spreading across America, infecting our brains, designed to make us forget everything that was said in the Republican primary for the last 2 years. So that the current campaign goes something like this. Hey, vote for me, I fix things. Obama, oh yeah, we left him a mess, but it's not all fixed, so vote for me. Okay, where's your budget? Don't worry about that, forget about the details, I fix things. But President Obama has a budget and the numbers add up. Oh, well, I fix things. But we just had the biggest one-year drop in unemployment in 17 years. But I fixed things. But these two totally non-political expert economics groups just said if we don't mess up what he's doing, we'll get 12 million jobs in the next 4 years. Well, that's why I promised you 12 million jobs. I want credit for what he did. I fixed things. Now we're laughing. Let's talk about what is not in dispute. The things that this public health epidemic still hasn't called into dispute. And why both a Congressman Castro and a Congressman Gallego are important to the young people in this audience. One of the most important reforms passed in the last 4 years that nearly nobody knows about, that disproportionately affects Latinos all over the United States, is a dramatic improvement in the student loan reform. And this is why, and every American should care about this. You know why? Because from World War II through the end of my service, America ranked first or second in the world in our percentage of young people going to college, and first or second in the world with percentage of young people getting degrees. So it got harder. Everybody figured out that made us rich, so they're trying to do it. That's fair. And we have more first-generation immigrants, and we have more challenges, so you could expect if little countries decided to do what we did, well, their percentages might be a little higher. But we have fallen to 16th in the percentage of our young people getting degrees. Although we're still near the top in the percentage of our young people who go to college. And you know why, don't you? Because it costs so much and people are scared they can't borrow any more money and they're scared they'll never be able to repay it. Now, here's the old system that Barack Obama and the Congress changed. That Mitt Romney has not changed. This is one thing, it's not like the budget. He didn't hide this. He wants to repeal this. Okay, so this is a clear choice that affects your life, the life of every person in this room, directly or indirectly. The old law gave $60 billion over 10 years to subsidize banks to make loans to students. And the loans were reasonably high interest rates, and then you could repay them or not, and if you didn't, you defaulted. And the government would give 90% of the money back to the banks, and they gave them a fee to pay the loans. When I was president, I said, I don't like this. What if we loaned the money directly to the schools? They gave the money to the kids at lower cost, and the kids got to pay it back as a percentage of their income. Now, just in the schools where we did it on an experimental basis, the average student saved $1,300 repaying every $10,000 they borrowed. And so they saved $9 billion, and the taxpayers saved $4 billion, because young people are honorable. When they get a degree and they know it empowers them, they pay their loans back if they can. So President Obama said, let's do this nationwide. And they did, and that is the law. And here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. Now you listen carefully. People don't know this, and this affects your life. So next year, everywhere in America, this will be the law on federal student loans. You will all be able to borrow the money directly from the government. They will set aside a loan reserve. It's not going to be like the housing collapse. There'll be a loan reserve. The loans will be at lower interest, but most important, every one of you who borrows money will have the absolute right to pay that loan back as a low fixed percentage of your income for 20 years. Now, think about this. This is a huge deal. It means two things. It means, number one, nobody will ever have to drop out of college again because they're scared they can't repay their bills. Nobody. And we can go back to the top of the heap in the percentage of people with college degrees. The second thing it means is, suppose you get out of college and you want to be a teacher in a small town in South Texas with a low property tax base and you can't make a lot of money. You wouldn't have been able to do it before because you couldn't make your loan payment. Now, how much you have to pay will be determined by your salary. So if you want to go teach kids in a poor town for a while, if you want to work at a public health clinic in inner city San Antonio, if you're a doctor and you've got over $200,000 in medical bills from school, which is the average in America, and you want to go to a poor town or to a poor neighborhood in a big town in Texas and practice medicine, you can do it because your loan repayment is determined by your salary, not the other way around. This will, and believe it or not, here's the best thing of all. It saves $60 billion over 10 years, and the law takes that money and funds increases in Pell Grants every year for a decade, and guarantees that we'll be able to keep the tax credits for middle-class families that enable them to help their kids go to school. Now, so if they go to Congress and we keep a majority and you re-elect Barack Obama, that will be the law of the land. What does the president's opponent propose to do? You're going to have a hard time believing this, but this is what they propose. They want to repeal the law, give the $60 billion back to the banks, go back to the old system, raise the cost of student loans, make them harder to repay, increase the dropout rate, not guarantee the future of Pell Grants and the tax credits, and hurt America's productivity and competitiveness in the world. It's unbelievable. And this is one thing that there's been no attempt to gloss over. They're going to give that money back to the banks and take it away from the kids and undermine the future of Americans, and it will disproportionately affect Hispanic Americans in every state in this country, but all of our children will be affected and our entire economy will be affected. On that grounds alone, you should vote for Joaquin Castro and Pete Gallego and Barack Obama. Here's another little thing about which there is no doubt. Big reason to vote for a Congressman Castro and a Congressman Gallego. Pete's opponent has opposed the health care bill. Says it's terrible. And one of the things that the outbreak of Romnesia has not made us forget is that Governor Romney wants to repeal this health care bill and talks about how terrible it is. So let's just run down memory lane here and look at the facts. Here's what's happened since this terrible health care bill took law. And here's why they want to repeal it. The law says that 80 to 85% of your health care premium has to go to your health care, not to profits or promotion. What has happened? What has happened? In the very first year this has been the law, insurance companies have refunded $1.3 billion to policyholders. In Texas, 1.5 million Texans have gotten $167 million in refunds on their health insurance premiums because the insurance companies couldn't keep more than 80 to 85% they had to put into health care. They couldn't keep the rest of the profit. For the first time in 50 years, 50 years, health care inflation has been under 4% for 2 years in a row. 3 million young people under the age of 26 are insured for the first time because they can be on their parents' health insurance policy. Now, I don't know about you, but I think repealing that is a really bad idea. And what they don't tell you is the worst thing we could do is to go back to the old system. We're spending almost 18% of our income on health care. No other big rich country spends more than 11.8. That's just numbers, right? You know how much money that is? $1 trillion a year. Trillion, not billion. $1 trillion we spend on health care we would not spend with any other country's health system. Last week, big headline in USA Today. Wages held down because employers have to spend the money that would go to pay raises on health insurance premiums. Pete Gallego's opponent, he wants to go back to that system. He'd rather the insurance companies have the money than the working people of Texas. Pete Gallego would rather the working people of Texas be able to get both a better health care system and a pay raise. And let me just say, there's one or two other things that Romnesia cannot erase. There's this budget deal. Can you imagine it? He says the president's run out of new ideas. He said, vote for me, here's my new idea. I'll cut taxes for the middle class and small business. Barack Obama cut taxes for the middle class an average of $3,600 and cut small business taxes 18 times. Doesn't sound like a new idea to me. Vote for me and I'll double exports. In the first 4 years, in the middle of a miserable economy, we've increased exports 45%. It's the biggest percentage of our GDP it's ever been. And he says, vote for me and I will find a way. I don't want to cut taxes for wealthy people. I'm not trying to help Bill Clinton and Greg Popovich. I just want to help the middle class. But you got to listen. When Romnesia breaks out, you have to listen. I love that second debate. But he admitted he did. You know what? Remember what he said? He said, we're going to cut rates and the upper 5% of the American people will pay the same percent of taxes they were paying before. Now, folks, think about this. They say the biggest problem in America is the debt. Let me remind you, the debt was quadrupled under Republican presidents before I became president. Doubled after I left. They don't really think it's a problem except when the Democrats are in. But listen to this. Now think. They think nobody who ever went to high school here remembers the first thing they learned in arithmetic. Think about that. If you cut middle-class taxes, and I'm still paying 60% of the load, what I was paying before, I get 60% of the tax cuts. If you lower everybody else's taxes, and I say the same percentage I was paying before, you got to lower mine. And since I had 60% of the burden, I get 60% of the tax cuts. That's what they have promised. And Mr. Ryan, in his debate, admitted they had no idea where they were going to make up the money. He didn't say that. Here's what he said. He said, yeah, I know we're going to cut taxes $5 trillion over a decade, but we think this debt is terrible. And we have identified $1 trillion that we can get back by eliminating deductions corporations get and lowering our rates. He's right about that. That's the president's proposal. We ought to do it. That's fine. That's $1 trillion against $1 trillion. Fine. Then he says, and we have identified another $1 trillion in personal deductions that wealthy people take we could get rid of. Now, keep in mind, here's their proposal. We're going to cut $5 trillion. We're going to make $2 trillion of it up by repealing deductions. That leaves 3. 5 minus 2 is still 3. They cannot repeal arithmetic. No matter how foggy-headed I get, 5 minus 2 still leaves 3. So they say, the biggest problem in the world is our debt. Hire us. We will dig the hole $3 trillion deeper, and then we'll figure out how to fill it in. Well, tell us how you're going to fill it in. See me about that after the election. I fix things. Don't bother me about the details. How are we supposed to take this seriously? This is a campaign of new ideas. It certainly is. It is a new idea that a person could run for president as a businessman and a fixer and be the only candidate in a race that will not give us a budget with numbers that add up and expect people to vote for it, saying that this is the #1 problem. Now, there are other alternatives. If you cut everybody's taxes and you dig the hole $3 trillion deeper, the other alternatives are to blow up the debt. And if you don't want to do that, you got to gut the budget. Gut it. That's what the Ryan budget did, that Governor Romney has endorsed. Now, Mayor Castro has this initiative on the ballot here for preschool education, right? And this is a huge deal because children develop a lot of their brain framework before they ever go to school, before they ever go to kindergarten. You can increase their capacity to learn dramatically if you have the right preschool program. When I was president, we had the first aggressive pre-kindergarten funding effort. We dramatically increased Head Start, and we did a lot of other pre-kindergarten programs to deal with early childhood education. That will help what the mayor wants to do. It will reinforce it if the money's there. Another reason to have a Congressman Castro and a Congressman Gallego is that when they come to him and say, the Tea Party does, oh, we want to cut taxes and get rid of all this education spending, it's a waste of money, they will say, no, it is not. It is our future, and we refuse to give away our future. You got to decide. This is about whether you think a political philosophy that says we're all in this together is better than you're on your own. Whether you think an economic philosophy that strives for shared benefits and shared responsibilities is better than trickle down. Just give it to the top and know it'll work out a lot. Whether you think evidence is way better than ideology as a basis for making decisions. And whether you think budgets are made better with arithmetic or illusion. That's what this is about. Look, this country is coming back. We've got manufacturing job growth for the first time since the 1990s. We younger than Europe. We are younger than Japan. In 20 years, we're going to be younger than China. And we are the only country with somebody here from everywhere. Look around this room. We are coming back. But we've got to vote for the future. We cannot say what the Tea Party says. By the way, I have to say, for people who tell us every day how much they hate the government and why we should hate it, they spend a whole lot of time trying to get a hold of it. And trying to help their pals when they do. It's amazing. If I disliked anything as much as they dislike government, I'd run the other way. But look, we are all in this together. The countries in the world today that have both a good economy and a good government, and they work together, that think about swelling the middle class and giving poor people an honorable way to work their way into it, that give all their children a chance to get a good education. Those are the ones that are winning in the modern economy. Those are the ones that are winning the future. America can lead that parade, but we got to invest in your education. We have to invest in science and technology and innovation. We have to reward people who work hard, not punish them. And this is no new deal. As I said when I spoke at the Democratic Convention, in the last 51 years, the Democrats have had the White House 24 years, the Republicans 28, 52 years. We've had 66 million jobs in those 52 years. 42 million under the Democrats, 24 million under the Republicans. Our way works better. The stock market has grown more under the Democrats than the Republicans. Corporate profits have grown up. Wealthy people do better when there are working people who have jobs, and poor people can earn a living and educate their children, and they have money to buy things that lifts us all. That's what this is about. Now, you're going to determine this election. You and the people who aren't here. And you're going to determine it by both how you vote and whether you vote. There is no doubt in my mind that if every single person in Texas who was eligible to vote registered and voted, this would be a Democratic state today. And if you believe in the future that the people on this stage represent, and I do, if you believe in the hopes and dreams that they embody in their own lives and that they want to spread over every young person in Bexar County and beyond, to the far borders of America, and I do, then you have to show up and stand with them, stand with the President, and stand for America's future. Thank you, and God bless you.